The first thing she took from me was not my passport. It was the word "sir." "Please step out of the line, human," the officer said, loud enough for every noble, merchant, and board customs clerk in Crown Gate 7 to hear. I had been awake for 36 hours. My shirt still smelled like coolant from the engine room of the USC Marigold, and all I wanted was to make my connecting shuttle to Seattle before my niece blew out the candles without me. I was holding a cheap duffel bag in one hand, a half-dead phone in the other, and a paper cup of station coffee that tasted like burnt plastic. Nothing about me looked important. That was probably the problem. Crown Gate 7 was the kind of place that made regular people feel like trespassers. The ceiling arched half a mile above us, all blue glass and silver ribs, with ships sliding past the windows like quiet whales. The Vare Dominion loved making everything feel royal, even customs. There were separate lanes for ambassadors, fleet officers, hereditary families, religious envoys, and then one long miserable line for everyone else. My ticket had routed me into the diplomatic transit lane by mistake, or so I thought. I had already tried to explain that to the kiosk twice. The kiosk did not care. The alien officer behind the counter cared even less. Her nameplate translated itself as Commander Savanero. She was tall, maybe 7 feet, with dark blue skin that caught the light like oil on water, and she wore her uniform like it had personally won a war. She looked at my boots, my jacket, the old duffel, then finally at my face. "Occupation?" she asked. "Maintenance contractor," I said. "Atmospheric systems, commercial freight." Her mouth tightened like I had tracked mud across a church floor. "Purpose of transit through Dominion space?" "Going home." "That is not a purpose." I breathed in through my nose and counted to 3, the way my dad taught me when I was a kid and angry enough to embarrass myself. "Family birthday. My niece turns 6 tomorrow. I am trying not to miss it." Somewhere behind me, someone laughed. Not loud, just enough. A soft, polished little sound from a creature wrapped in white ceremonial fabric and jewelry that floated around his neck without touching skin. "A human in noble transit for a child's cake," he said to his companion. How charming. I kept my eyes on the counter. The old me might have said something. The tired me knew better. Out here, when a human raised his voice, it became a security concern. When an alien noble mocked you, it was culture. Commander Neril tapped her fingers against the glass. "Bag on the inspection field." I set the duffel down. "There is nothing in there but work clothes and a gift." "Then you will not mind." She opened it without waiting. Socks, a rolled-up gray hoodie, a toothbrush, a cracked paperback, 2 sealed packets of instant oatmeal from the ship galley. Then she pulled out the purple plastic bracelet my niece had mailed me 3 months earlier, the one with Uncle Ethan written in marker and covered in tiny dinosaur stickers. The noble behind me chuckled again. "Do humans carry toys for courage?" My hand closed slowly into a fist, then opened again. I looked at that little bracelet hanging from the officer's long fingers and felt something twist in my chest. Not rage. Not yet. Just the heavy, familiar humiliation of being far from home and treated like home did not matter. "Please put that back," I said. Commander Neril glanced at the bracelet, then at me. "You are in no position to give instructions. It belongs to a little girl." Then she should have chosen a more responsible courier. The coffee cup bent in my grip. Warm drops slipped over my knuckles. I did not move. I did not raise my voice. I just stood there under the huge, shining ceiling while 100 strangers watched me decide what kind of man I was going to be. Finally, Neril tossed the bracelet back into the bag and held out one hand. Final identification. For a second, I almost gave her my regular work badge. It would have been easier, quieter. I could already see the shuttle schedule blinking in the distance, my boarding time getting smaller by the minute. But then she looked past me and said, "Next time, use the labor gates where your species belongs." So I reached into the inside pocket of my jacket and pulled out the black passport. I placed the black passport on the counter with 2 fingers, careful not to slide it, careful not to make it look dramatic, because the last thing I wanted was attention. It landed softly on the glass between us, just a small worn booklet with a silver earth seal pressed into the cover and one bent corner from spending too many years in jacket pockets, glove boxes, and ship lockers. Commander Neril stared at it like I had handed her a napkin. "This is your identification?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. This document is not formatted according to Dominion transit standards. It is not a Dominion document." Her eyes lifted. Do you think that answer improves your situation? Behind me, the noble with the floating jewelry made another quiet sound, and a few others joined him this time. I could feel the heat creeping up my neck. I could also feel the old training settle over it. Not military training. Not anything heroic. Just the kind you get after a lifetime of being told to stay calm, because your anger will always be judged louder than theirs. I looked at the passport instead of her face. It is valid under interstellar travel law. Human law, she said, almost smiling. Treaty law. That word changed her expression by a fraction. Not fear. Not yet. More like annoyance finding a crack in its own mirror. She picked up the passport with the tips of her fingers, as if touching it directly might leave grease on her reputation. You people love your treaties. We learned to read them carefully. How impressive. She turned the passport over, checking for a light strip, a living seal, some kind of noble blood marker. There was nothing like that. Earth had never been good at making power look pretty. We stamped things, laminated things, signed things in dark ink, and expected the universe to honor the page. It drove the older species crazy. She set the booklet under the scanner. Nothing happened. She frowned and moved it again. The scanner gave a low chirp, then went dead. Not dim. Dead. The blue inspection field across my duffel snapped off. The glass counter turned opaque. Far above us, one of the huge arrival boards froze mid-scroll, leaving the words delayed by authority hanging over the whole hall like a bad joke. Neril tapped the scanner twice. System error. Could be, I said. Do not speak. I closed my mouth. That was fine with me. Speaking had never helped much in rooms where people had already decided what you were. She called over a junior clerk, a pale gray alien with four careful hands and the nervous posture of someone who still believed procedures protected him. Run this manually, Neril ordered. The clerk looked at the passport, then at me, then back at the passport. Commander, this seal is Terran Union Sovereign Class. That category is obsolete. No, Commander, he said quieter now. It is restricted. The laughter behind me thinned out. I heard fabric shift, jewelry hum. Someone stepped back half an inch. Neril's voice sharpened. Restricted does not mean untouchable. The clerk swallowed. With respect, in this case, it may. I hated that sentence. I hated the way people looked at me after it. Like I had turned from a tired mechanic into a court summons. Like the person standing there with coffee on his hand and a birthday bracelet in his bag had disappeared, and all that remained was a legal problem with shoes. Neril pulled the passport closer, her confidence fighting for air. Open it. The clerk did not move. Commander, I am not authorized. I gave you an order. The system will log my handprint. Then use mine. The clerk looked genuinely scared now. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Ma'am, I said softly. You should not do that. Neril's head turned toward me. Was that a threat? No. I looked at the dead scanner, then at the frozen arrival board, then back at the passport lying between us. It was advice. For the first time since I stepped out of line, nobody laughed. The air in Crown Gate 7 felt thinner, colder, and a whole lot quieter than it had 30 seconds before. Then the counter spoke in a calm female voice, plain American English, with no Dominion accent at all. Terran authority handshake received. Local jurisdiction suspended pending identity confirmation. Commander Neril went still. So did I? Because I knew that voice. Every sovereign passport holder did. It was the voice that meant Earth had heard its name. The station did not shut down all at once. It paused, which was worse. The distant footsteps, the language murmurs, the soft chime of arrival gates, even the little advertising drones floating above the duty-free stalls all seemed to hold their breath at the same time. Commander Neril stared at the counter like it had betrayed her in public. The junior clerk took one careful step back, all four hands lifted away from the passport. I kept mine at my sides. I had learned a long time ago that when Earth answered, the smartest thing a person could do was stop touching things. The voice came again, calm and familiar, the kind of voice you would expect from an airport announcement in Denver or Atlanta, not from a Dominion Royal Transit hall hanging over an alien planet. Identity confirmation requires visual, biometric, and verbal acknowledgement from bearer. Ethan Cole Parker, please face the terminal. My stomach tightened when it used my full name. Full names have a way of pulling you back through time. My mother used mine when she was proud, my father used it when I was in trouble, and Earth used it when some old door I wished had stayed closed was swinging open again. I stepped closer to the counter. Neril moved as if to block me, then stopped herself. That tiny hesitation told me more than her uniform ever had. She was starting to understand that the room did not belong to her anymore. A small lens rose from the dead scanner, glowing soft white. State your name. I swallowed. Ethan Cole Parker. Place of birth. Portland, Oregon. Current citizenship. Terran Union, North American District. A few aliens behind me whispered at that, and I wanted to turn around and tell them it was not a spell. It was just where I was from. It was rain on old sidewalks, bad traffic on Interstate 5, my dad grilling burgers in February because he hated being told weather had rules. It was not a throne. It was not a weapon. It was home. The terminal clicked once. Biometric match confirmed. Sovereign human passport active. Asterian protected survivor status verified. There it was. The word I hated most. Survivor. The hall went even quieter, but inside my head, everything got loud. I saw a hallway washed in emergency lights. I saw my mother kneeling to zip my coat because I was shaking too hard to do it myself. I saw a stranger in a Terran rescue jacket telling me to keep my eyes on his hand, not on the smoke, not on the broken glass, not on the empty places where people should have been standing. I was 9 years old when Asterian happened. I was 34 now, and somehow that word still made me feel small enough to be carried. Commander Neril read the same line on her screen. Her face changed slowly, not because she pitied me, but because she recognized the legal weight of what she had nearly mishandled. That classification cannot be active, she said, but her voice had lost its edge. The Asterian Accord predates Dominion membership. The terminal answered before I could. The Dominion ratified inheritance obligations 12 years after admission to the Orion Treaty Network. Compliance is mandatory. The junior clerk looked like he wanted to vanish through the floor. Commander, he whispered, we need to notify Central Authority. Be quiet. Ma'am, the passport is not requesting clearance. It is overriding clearance. Neril looked at me then, really looked at me, and I hated how fast her eyes changed. 5 minutes earlier, I had been a tired human holding up her line. Now I was a walking diplomatic incident with coffee drying on my fingers. Why did you not declare this status immediately, she asked. I almost laughed, but it came out as a tired breath. Because I am trying to go home, not start a ceremony. The noble with the floating jewelry muttered something under his breath. Neril heard it, and so did I. Ridiculous. A labor mammal with royal clearance. The terminal pulsed once, soft and cold. Discriminatory language logged. The noble froze. For the first time all morning, the insult had consequences. I picked up the purple bracelet from my open duffel and slipped it into my jacket pocket. My hands were steady now, but that did not mean I was calm. It meant I had done this before. I looked at Neril and said, "Can I have my bag back, please?" She did not answer right away. Above us, every gate screen in Crown Gate 7 changed to the same blue-white seal of Earth, and the American voice spoke one more time. Bearer remains under local obstruction. Escalation timer initiated. The timer appeared above the counter in clean white numbers, starting at 10 minutes and counting down. Nobody moved for the first 5 seconds. That was the strange thing about fear in important rooms. It did not always look like panic. Sometimes it looked like very rich people suddenly remembering appointments somewhere else. The noble with the floating jewelry took one step backward, then another, trying to make it seem casual. Commander Neril noticed. "No one leaves," she said, but even her command sounded thinner now. "This area is under Dominion review." The terminal answered in that same calm American voice. "Correction. This area is under joint treaty hold pending release of bearer and property." I rubbed the dried coffee from my knuckles with my thumb. "Commander, I am not trying to make your day worse." Her eyes snapped to mine. "You have already done that." "No, ma'am. You did that when you pulled me out of line." The words came out before I had time to dress them up. Not loud, not sharp, just tired enough to be honest. The junior clerk stared at the floor. Neril stood very still, and for a second I thought she might double down because pride is a stupid thing, and uniforms make it worse. Then a gold line opened across her wrist console, and a voice from somewhere higher up the Dominion food chain poured into the hall. "Commander Neril, explain why Crown Gate 7 has triggered a Terran sovereign escalation." Her posture changed instantly. Shoulders back, chin lowered, the careful pose of someone being watched by the people who decide whether your career survives lunch. "Central Authority, We are processing an irregular human traveler who entered noble transit without proper declaration. Human name? Nerl looked at me like the name itself was now an accusation. Ethan Cole Parker. The silence on the other end lasted just long enough for everyone to feel it. Then the voice returned, lower. Repeat the name. Nerl did. This time she did not say human like it was a stain. Central Authority spoke again. Commander, step away from the bearer. Return all personal effects. Do not touch the passport without consent. Nerl's jaw tightened. Central Authority. With respect, the traveler failed to disclose sovereign status. I leaned toward the counter. I gave you my identification when you asked for it. The junior clerk made a tiny sound, like he wished he had not heard that because now it belonged in the record. The timer kept counting. 9 minutes. 32 seconds. Central Authority said, Commander, is the bearer restrained? No, injured. No, separated from property. Nerl did not answer right away. Her eyes moved to my open duffel, to the bracelet in my pocket, to the passport still lying on the sealed counter. Temporarily, she said. The terminal pulsed. Property separation confirmed. I closed my eyes for half a second. I was not angry the way people expect a man to be angry. I was embarrassed. That sounds small, but it is not. Embarrassment can sit in your chest like a stone when you are alone in a place that already thinks you are less than everybody else. I thought about my niece waiting in a paper party hat, about my sister texting me 3 times to ask whether Uncle Ethan was really going to make it, about how hard I had tried to keep one normal promise. Commander, I said, I need my bag, my passport, and a gate number. That is all. Her fingers hovered near the duffel, but protocol pinned her in place. The Dominion had spent centuries teaching its officers how to command lesser species. It had apparently spent less time teaching them how to apologize. Finally, she reached down, lifted the duffel with both hands, and set it on my side of the inspection line. Then she placed her palm flat against her chest, a gesture that made the crowd shift uneasily. The junior clerk went pale. Commander, he whispered, the formal acknowledgement. Nerl ignored him for one breath too long. The timer dropped under 9 minutes. Then, in front of every noble who had laughed, every clerk who had watched, and every camera in Crown Gate 7, Commander Sava Nerl lowered one knee to the polished floor. Her voice was quiet now. Ethan Cole Parker, bearer of Terran sovereign protection, the Vare Dominion recognizes your passage. I looked down at her and felt no victory at all. Only the sick, heavy sadness of knowing kindness would have been easier than all of this. Please stand up, I said. I just want to go home. Commander Nerl stood slowly, but she did not look the same as she had 10 minutes earlier. The sharpness was still there, the uniform was still perfect, but something under it had cracked. Not enough to make her kind. Enough to make her careful. She slid my passport toward me without touching the cover again, then placed both hands flat on the counter. Your passage has been restored, she said. A private escort will take you to docking gate 12. I picked up the passport, and the moment my fingers touched it, the blue-white seal above the hull dimmed by one shade. Not gone. Just waiting. That was how Earth worked with these things. Polite until it was not. Thank you, I said, because my mother had raised me to say it even when people made it hard. Nerl blinked once, like she had not expected manners from the man she had just humiliated. You are thanking me? You gave it back. I should not have taken it. That was not an apology, but it was close enough that half the room seemed offended by it. I zipped my duffel slowly, checking that the bracelet was still in my jacket pocket. My hands had started to shake a little now that the worst part seemed over. That always happened after. During the hard moments, I could hold steady. Afterward, when my body realized it did not have to keep pretending, it sent the bill. I tucked the passport inside my coat and looked past Nerl toward the departure screens. Seattle connection, delayed. Gate pending. I almost laughed. After all that, the universe still had the nerve to behave like an airport. How long to gate 12? I asked. 7 minutes by priority lift, she said. Then I can still make it. The junior clerk quietly handed me a clean cloth for the coffee on my hand. I took it. Appreciate it. He nodded too fast. Of course, sir. There it was again. Sir. A tiny word, but after having it taken away, getting it back felt heavier than it should have. I wiped my knuckles and told myself not to make a whole thing out of it. Just walk. Just get to the gate. Just make the birthday. But as I stepped away from the counter, The noble with the floating jewelry moved into my path. Up close, he was taller than I expected, all polished robes and thin silver markings across his face. His name appeared in my translator as Lord Kavros of House Veyrath. Of course he had a house. People like him always had a house, a seal, a bloodline, some old story explaining why the rules were softer around them. This is absurd, Kavros said, not to me at first, but to the room. A Dominion officer kneels to a freight worker because of an old Terran panic clause? Neril stepped forward. Lord Kavros, this matter is resolved. No, he said. This matter is embarrassing. Then he looked at me like I was a stain someone had failed to scrub out of the marble. Tell me, human, do they teach you to enjoy this? Walking into civilized stations with legal tricks and waiting for better species to bow. I felt every camera in the hall turn a little closer. That was not possible, maybe, but it felt true. I adjusted the strap on my duffel. I did not ask anyone to bow. And yet you allowed it. I asked her to stand. How generous. His voice was smooth, but the anger underneath was not. It was the anger of a man who had never been told no by anything smaller than a government. I glanced at Neril. For the first time, she looked worried for me, which was new and not especially comforting. Lord Kavros, she said carefully. Interfering with a protected bearer is a treaty violation. He smiled at that. Then perhaps your treaty needs to remember whose station this is. He reached toward my coat, toward the pocket where the black passport rested. I moved back one step, not fast, not dramatic, just enough. Do not touch me, I said. The hall went silent again, but this silence was different. The first one had been fear of Earth. This one was the moment before someone proud decided whether being warned by a human was something he could survive in public. Kavros looked at my hand, then at my face. Or what? I thought about my mother in that Asterian hallway. I thought about the rescue worker telling a 9-year-old boy to keep walking. I thought about how tired I was of people needing a threat before they could recognize a boundary. My voice came out quiet. Or you prove why the passport exists. For a second, Lord Kavros did nothing. He just stared at me, as if he was trying to decide whether a man in a stained work shirt had really spoken to him that way in front of witnesses. I could see the calculation working behind his eyes. If he backed down, every noble in that hall would remember it. If he pushed forward, every system in the station would remember that too. Pride made the decision for him. You mistake paperwork for power, he said. Then he reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the black passport. Commander Neril moved fast, but not fast enough to stop him from lifting it into the air like a dirty receipt. Lord Kavros, return it immediately. Her voice cracked on the last word. That scared me more than his arrogance. Neril understood what he had just done. He did not. The moment his fingers closed around the cover, the blue-white seal above Crown Gate 7 vanished. Not faded. Vanished. Every screen in the hall went black. The arrival boards, the customs lights, the floating advertisements, the polished floor markers, all of it shut off at once. A station that had been built to impress entire civilizations suddenly looked like a mall after closing time. In the dark, Kavros laughed once. There, your little Earth symbol is gone. No, I said, and I hated how tired my voice sounded. It stopped asking. A thin white line appeared across every black screen at the same time. Then the American voice returned, lower now, still polite, still calm, and somehow worse for it. Terran sovereign document, seized by unauthorized Dominion noble authority. Bearer boundary violation confirmed. Escalation transferred to recovery command. Kavros looked at the passport, then at the screens. This is theater. Neril turned fully toward him. My lord, give it back. Do not order me. I am not protecting him from you, she said. I am trying to protect this station from what you are inviting. That finally put a small crack in his expression. Only a small one. People like Kavros do not become humble all at once. They leak confidence slowly, and they resent every drop. He tightened his grip on the passport. He is one man. I met his eyes. That is what they said at Asterian. The words slipped out before I could stop them. The hall changed around me. Even the people who did not know the story seemed to understand from the faces of those who did. Neril did. The junior clerk did. A few older aliens in the diplomatic lanes lowered their eyes as if the name itself was something you did not stare at. Kavros looked irritated by the silence. Old tragedies do not give your species ownership of fear. No, I said. They gave us a list of names. My phone buzzed in my pocket. The sound was so normal that it almost broke me. I pulled it out carefully, keeping my other hand visible. A message from my sister sat on the cracked screen. Dinosaurs are set up. She keeps asking if you are close. I stared at that line longer than I should have. Suddenly, the huge station, the noble, the treaty, the passport, all of it felt ridiculous next to a 6-year-old waiting by a cake. I turned the phone so Neryl could see it, though I do not know why. Maybe I needed someone in that room to understand I was not trying to win history. I was trying to keep a promise. "Commander," I said, "I need that back." Neryl stepped toward Kavros again, slower this time, hands open. "My lord, please." "Please," he repeated, disgusted. Now the Dominion begs for humans? Before she could answer, the floor under our feet gave a soft mechanical hum. Not an alarm, not an explosion, just a change in ownership. The docking locks above Gate 12 released one by one, and through the high glass wall, 3 plain white rescue ships turned their running lights toward the station. They had been sitting there the whole time, registered as medical support, quiet as parked ambulances. Their hull markings brightened. Terran Recovery Service. Neryl whispered something in her own language that my translator did not catch. The overhead speakers clicked, and a human man with a Virginia accent spoke like he was calling about a delayed rental car. "Crown Gate 7, this is Terran Recovery. Return the passport and release Ethan Cole Parker." Kavros still held the booklet, but now his hand was shaking. The voice from the rescue ships did not get louder when Kavros failed to answer. That was what made it feel serious. People who were bluffing repeated themselves. Earth had a habit of stating a fact once and letting the room decide whether it wanted to become a problem. Kavros stared through the high glass at the 3 white ships, their running lights steady. Their medical markings now peeled back by projected overlays that showed treaty enforcement seals underneath. They were not warships, not officially. They were recovery vessels, the kind sent for stranded crews, injured diplomats, lost miners, and, apparently, one tired maintenance contractor who had missed lunch and was probably about to miss a dinosaur birthday cake. "This is Dominion's sovereign space," Kavros said, but the words had lost their shine. The man with the Virginia accent answered, "Yes, sir. That is why we are requesting compliance before entering." "Requesting?" Kavros snapped. "You have hijacked our docking systems." "No, sir. Your station ratified the emergency access clause in the Asterian Accord. We are using the door you signed." A few aliens turned toward the older diplomats in the back of the hall. None of them looked surprised. That told me everything. The Dominion knew about the clause. They just never imagined it would be used for someone like me, someone with work boots and a duffel bag instead of a crown. Commander Neryl stepped closer to Kavros, her hands still open. "My lord, you are holding protected Terran property. Return it to the bearer. This booklet has humiliated my house." "No," she said, and her voice was steadier now. "You did that yourself." The room seemed to tilt around that sentence. I saw the junior clerk look up at her like he had just witnessed a law of nature break in public. Kavros looked at her as if she had slapped him, though she had not moved an inch. "You forget your rank, Commander." I remember my oath. That was the moment I stopped seeing her as the officer who had embarrassed me and started seeing something more complicated. A person inside a machine. A woman who had been trained to look down, then suddenly asked to stand upright with everyone watching. I knew a little about that. Maybe more than I wanted to admit. My phone buzzed again. My sister had sent a picture this time. My niece, Ellie, sitting at the kitchen table with a paper dinosaur crown on her head, holding up 6 fingers and grinning with the kind of faith only kids have, the kind that assumes adults can cross galaxies because they promised. I turned the screen off before my face could betray me. "Lord Kavros," I said, "I am going to ask one more time. Please give it back." He looked at me, then at the ships, then at the crowd that was no longer laughing with him. Pride is a lonely place when the audience stops clapping. For a second, I thought he might finally do the smart thing. Instead, he lifted the passport higher. "And if I refuse?" The rescue officer answered before I could. "Then under Article 9, Section 4, Terran Recovery will classify the bearer as unlawfully obstructed and retrieve him directly." Kavros gave a thin smile. "Retrieve him? From inside my station?" "Yes, sir." "With what army?" There was a small pause. Not dramatic. More like someone checking a form. Then the rescue officer said, "We did not bring an army. We brought paperwork, a boarding ramp, and a federal marshal. A low mechanical tone rolled through Crown Gate 7. Gate 12 opened behind us, not with force, but with perfect administrative confidence. The sealed priority corridor lit up blue-white from floor to ceiling, and at the far end, a human woman in a dark service jacket walked into view with 2 Dominion legal officers following 3 steps behind her. She was maybe 50, with gray at her temples, a tablet under one arm, and the exhausted patience of a woman who had spent her whole career making powerful people read the fine print. Her badge translated across every screen in the hall. Deputy Marshal Rachel Harlan, Terran Recovery Service. She stopped at the edge of the customs floor, looked straight at Kavros, and said, "Sir, you are holding up a citizen who has a family event to attend." For the first time all day, I almost smiled. Deputy Marshal Rachel Harlan did not walk fast. She did not need to. Every step she took across Crown Gate 7 made the station feel less like a palace and more like a courthouse where someone had just found the missing page. The 2 Dominion legal officers behind her looked miserable, which told me they had already read that page and hated every word of it. Kavros still held my passport, but he was holding it differently now. Not like a trophy, more like a cup that had gotten too hot. "Marshal," he said, trying to recover the smooth royal tone. "This is an internal Dominion matter." Harlan stopped about 10 feet from him and looked over the top of her tablet. "No, sir. An internal matter is a delayed meal voucher. This is unlawful interference with a protected Terran citizen and seizure of sovereign travel documentation. Different folder." I heard somebody behind me make a small choking sound. Maybe surprise, maybe fear, maybe the sound of a very old social order realizing it was being spoken to by a tired American woman with reading glasses. Kavros glanced at the Dominion legal officers. "You allow this tone?" One of them lowered his head. "Lord Kavros, the Marshal is operating within the Emergency Access Clause." I did not ask what the clause says. Harlan raised one finger. "That is usually where these situations go wrong." I almost smiled again, but it faded before it reached my face. My body was running out of whatever had kept me upright. The missed sleep, the public shame, Asterion being dragged into the light, Ellie waiting at home, all of it pressed down at once. I felt like I was standing in a grocery store after a funeral, trying to remember which cereal I came in for. Harlan noticed. Her eyes moved from Kavros to me, and her voice softened without losing its edge. "Mr. Parker, are you able to walk?" "Yes, ma'am." "Are you requesting Terran escort out of Dominion custody?" I looked at Neryl. She stood beside the counter, hands folded, face tight with the kind of regret that had arrived too late, but had arrived anyway. "Am I in custody?" I asked. Neryl answered before anyone else could. "No." The word came out firm, almost angry, but not at me. "You are not." Harlan nodded once. "Good. Then let us end the part where everyone pretends this is complicated." She turned back to Kavros and held out her hand. "Passport." He looked around the hall, searching for support and finding only witnesses. Even the nobles who had laughed earlier had become fascinated by the floor, their sleeves, the distant stars, anything except him. That was the lonely part about cruelty. It liked an audience until accountability walked in. Kavros lowered the passport, but he did not hand it to Harlan. He held it toward me. "Take it then." I did not move. Not because I wanted to embarrass him, but because some tired piece of me knew better than to let him rewrite the scene at the last second. Harlan understood immediately. "No, sir. You will return it properly." His jaw tightened. "It is a booklet. It is his." The words landed harder than any legal code. Kavros stared at her, then at the black cover, then finally stepped forward and placed the passport on the open inspection tray between us. He removed his hand slowly. The moment he did, the station lights came back in soft waves, not all at once, and every screen showed one simple line. "Document returned. Bearer release pending." I picked it up and slid it into my inside pocket, close to my ribs, where I could feel its weight. "Thank you," I said, though I was not sure who I was thanking anymore. Harlan stepped beside me. "Your connection has been transferred to Terran Recovery. We can get you to Seattle through Anchorage Relay if we move now. Will I make it by tomorrow?" She checked her tablet. "Mr. Parker, I once got a senator, 2 cats, and a wedding dress from Mars to Boston through a meteor quarantine. You will make the birthday." Something in my chest loosened so suddenly I had to look down. When I looked back up, Commander Neryl was still watching me. I could have walked away without saying anything. Maybe I should have. Instead, I said, "You did not have to be cruel." Her face went still. No defense came. No excuse. Just the truth finding a place to sit. "I know," she said. And that, more than the kneeling, more than the screens, more than the ships outside, was the first thing she said that sounded like respect. The corridor to Gate 12 was quiet in a way Crown Gate 7 had never been. No laughter followed us. No noble comments floated over my shoulder. Just the soft sound of my boots on the lit floor, Deputy Marshal Harlan walking beside me with her tablet tucked under one arm, and Commander Neril a few steps behind us because Dominion protocol required a local escort until the threshold. I wanted to feel relieved, but relief is not always clean. Sometimes it arrives mixed with embarrassment, old grief, and the strange ache of having been protected in public when all you wanted was to be left alone. The Terran recovery ship waited beyond the glass, plain white, practical, almost ugly compared to the Dominion cruisers docked nearby. I loved it immediately. It looked like every ambulance, post office truck, and county snowplow back home had somehow become a spacecraft. Useful, unromantic, there when needed. Harlan glanced at me. "You are quiet." "It has been a long day. It has been 43 minutes. Like I said." She smiled a little at that. Then her expression softened. "Your sister knows you are on the way. We routed a message through the relay. She said Ellie saved you a corner piece." I had to stop walking for a second. Not because my legs failed, but because the sentence hit something deeper than the treaty, deeper than the passport, deeper than all the old names locked inside it. A corner piece. Extra frosting. A little girl at a kitchen table believing the universe was still small enough for promises to survive it. I nodded once and kept moving. At the boarding line, Neril finally spoke. "Mr. Parker." I turned. She looked uncomfortable without the counter between us. Smaller, somehow, though she was still almost a foot taller than me. "I was taught that order matters more than comfort," she said. "That status must be verified before dignity is granted." I looked at her for a long moment. "That is a hard way to live." Her eyes lowered. "Yes." Harlan waited without interrupting. For once, no system spoke for me. No treaty clause. No terminal. Just me, a tired man with coffee stains on his sleeve and a little purple bracelet in his pocket. "The thing about dignity," I said, "is that it is not supposed to be a reward. You do not hand it out after the scanner like somebody. You start there. Everything else is paperwork." Neril absorbed that like it hurt, and maybe it should have. Then she placed one hand to her chest, not the formal kneeling gesture this time, just something quieter. "Safe passage, Ethan Cole Parker." I nodded. "Thank you, Commander." I stepped onto the recovery ship, and the hatch closed behind me with a soft thump that felt more like an exhale than an ending. Harlan handed me a fresh cup of coffee from the galley. It was terrible. It was perfect. Outside the window, Crown Gate 7 began shrinking behind us. All silver arches and royal glass, still grand, still proud, but somehow less untouchable than before. I took out the black passport and looked at the worn cover. People thought it made me royalty. They were wrong. It made me remembered. There is a difference. Royalty is about being born above others. Being remembered is about a promise made after too many people were treated like they did not matter. Earth did not come for me because I was special. Earth came because I was one of hers, and somewhere along the way, humanity had decided that one ordinary person trying to get home was worth the trouble. Hours later, when I walked into my sister's kitchen in Seattle, Ellie screamed my name and ran into my arms wearing that paper dinosaur crown. I hugged her carefully, breathed in birthday candles and vanilla frosting, and for the first time all day, nobody asked what my status was. Nobody checked my documents. Nobody bowed. My niece just handed me a plastic fork and said, "You made it." I looked at the purple bracelet on my wrist, then at my family around the table, and smiled. "Yeah," I said. "I promised."